Good afternoon, everyone. Good snowy afternoon. We'll talk about snow in just a minute. Today, we're going to talk about thermometers. You may be familiar with thermometers because when you go to a doctor, they put a small thermometer in your mouth. This is kind of a bigger thermometer right here. When you go to the doctor, they put a smaller one in your mouth, and it's to do what? It's to take your temperature to see if you have a fever. This bigger type of thermometer, take a look at this. You certainly would not put that in your mouth. What would you use it for? If you guessed we would use it to tell the temperature outside, you are correct. Many people hang these outside of their windows so they can look out the window and look at their thermometer to see how cold or hot it is. A lot of people use weather apps on their phone nowadays. But if you're old school, you would use a thermometer. So let me point out some things about the thermometer. The most obvious thing about a thermometer is that it has the red stuff in the middle, right? Well, last I heard, this red stuff is actually called mercury. And mercury is actually not red. It is actually dyed red. Mercury is a element. I'm not going to say it's a mineral, but you do find it in the earth, I believe. I'm getting really into science here. But anyway, the cool thing about mercury that made it cool enough to put in a thermometer is that when it gets hot, it tends to expand. So it's forced to go from this little little compartment here up this tube when it gets hot, and it expands or gets bigger. When it gets cold, the mercury tends to shrink or condense, and it tends to shrink and go back down. Okay, so we use the mercury in a thermometer so that we can actually read the thermometer and see where the temperature is at. You'll also notice on each side of the thermometer, there is a degrees, like a little degree sign. This little tiny O next to the letter C is a symbol that means degrees. The C is an abbreviation for Celsius, which is one unit of measurement that we use to tell temperature or to measure temperature. So the little degree sign and the C sign is read degrees Celsius. We don't often use Celsius in the United States. We usually talk about Fahrenheit, which would be this represented by this capital F here. But a lot of countries do use Celsius as a unit of measure. So keeping that in mind, it looks like the mercury has reached about here on this particular day when the temperature was taken. It's somewhere between 30 and 40 degrees Celsius. It's a little bit above this longer line. So I would say this thermometer is showing about 38 degrees because it's very close to 40, a little bit above 35. We'll talk about how thermometers skip count in a minute with their numbers on the side. So this temperature is showing about 38 degrees Celsius. Now over here, this symbol in this abbreviation says degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, Fahrenheit is usually what we talk about when we're talking about temperature here in the United States. So if you look at the mercury, it stops about here. And if you look over here on the Fahrenheit side, oh wow, it looks like it's about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So degrees Celsius, degrees Fahrenheit. We talked about the mercury and how it works. Now let's talk about how the thermometer shows the degrees with skip counting. If you'll notice the Celsius side, you'll notice that it skip counts by tens, because you go from 40 or negative 40, negative 30, negative 20, negative 10, 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on. Up here would be 60. I just didn't put the number there. Now, the negative degrees mean that it's colder than 0 degrees. So as you get closer to the 0, it gets colder and colder. And as you get below the 0, it gets even colder and colder and colder. So that's the Celsius side. The Fahrenheit side, it's skip counting by 20s. You go from 40 to 20 to 0, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, and then to 120. Up here would be 140. Wow, that would be a hot day, wouldn't it? 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, you have the negative numbers, okay, below 0 numbers. And you'll notice that there's lines also in between the numbers. So on this side, on the Celsius side, it's counting by tens, but in the lines in between, it's counting by fives. So if you just count by fives on the longer lines, it would count like this: 40, negative 35 degrees. I'm sorry, I should have started with negative 40. Yes, negative 35 degrees, negative 30, negative 25 degrees, negative 20, negative 15, negative 10, and then this would be 10 or 5, and then 0, and then 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. And then in between these lines, since this is counting by 20s, each line in between would show another count of 10. So if you were to just count on the longer lines, it would count negative 40, negative 30, negative 20, negative 10, 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140. Good job. Okay, now that we've thoroughly discussed the thermometer, I'm going to direct you to page 125 in your math books. Today you're doing page 125. Also, 126, let me show you what that looks like, this page right here. And also you're going to do page 127. So going back to page 125, I'm going to show you a few problems so you know how to do this. This page is called Temperature Changes. And we're going to use the change diagrams to show changes in temperature. We're going to write a number model for it, and then, of course, the answer. And then we're going to color in our thermometers to show the change in temperature. So this change diagram is showing that the temperature is starting at 30 degrees, and then it's going up 20 degrees. So you have 30 degrees plus 20 degrees. What would be the ending temperature? So you have 30 plus 20, which would be 50, right? If your head is kind of spinning, like, how did she get that answer? Well, I just did old school in my head, but if you need to do old school on paper, line up these numbers and add them up, you would get 52. Or 50 as well, I should say, not 52. Okay, so now we're going to write a number model with these three numbers. And of course, that number model would say 30 plus 20 Your n number is 50, so that would be equals 50. So let's write that down. So you have 30 plus 20, 20 equals 50. That would be your number model. And then, of course, your answer is 50. Okay, now you're going to color this thermometer with your pencil to show an end number of 50. So you're coloring your thermometer from here all the way up to 50 because the temperature ended up being 50 degrees at the end. Okay, so with this one, you have a starting temperature of 40, and then it goes down 10 degrees. I'm thinking it's probably getting toward nighttime. The sun is going down. It's starting to get colder. So the temperature goes down 10 degrees. So you need to find the end number by subtracting 40 and 10. If you need to write that down old school and do it that way, that is perfectly fine. You can do it in your head. That's perfectly fine too, but you should get an answer of 30. And then our number model would be 40 minus 10 equals 30. And then, of course, our answer would be 30 because we just subtracted, didn't we? All right. So since the ending number is 30, you need to color in this end thermometer so that it reaches 30. So you only color up to the 30. Okay? Your job is to do these next two problems on your own. And let me show you how to do a problem on page 126 because it's this time you're doing the reverse. You're looking at the thermometers and you're reading the information on the thermometers to figure out how you should fill in the change diagram. So you find your start number by looking at the start thermometer, which, let's see, here's 40. Up here is 50. We have a bunch of lines in between. Okay, so maybe that's counting by twos. Let's see, 40, 42, 44, 46, 48, 50. Yes, I've confirmed that we're counting by twos. So if this is 40, this must be 42. So our start temperature is 42. And it looks like our end temperature, here's 50. I know it's counting by twos until we get to 60. So this must be 52. So I'm going to put an end temperature of 52. Okay, we can actually count on this thermometer to see how much the temperature rose. We're going to count from 42 to 52. So let's count by twos to figure out how many degrees it rose. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It rose 10 degrees, didn't it? So we're going to indicate that by putting a plus 10. And there's your number model right there, all displayed for you. So our number model would be 42 plus 10. Oops, yeah, got it. Equals 52. Great. And of course, our answer is 52. Okay, so I'm going to turn you loose to do the rest of these on your own. Remember to do this page as well. And remember to finish this page as well.